Why is it so hard for Donald Trump to support Maria Corina and Reza Pahlavi? And the reason is very simple. History. The whole point of this video is not for you to agree or disagree with me, bro. Like, all I want you is to have a topic of conversation. Because if we stop talking to each other, that's when we start hating each other, hitting each other, and using guns. So the whole point of this video is for you to send it to a mate and start a conversation. In the 1950s, Mohammad Mossadegh was the prime minister of Iran. He was pretty much the ruler. But he wanted to nationalize the oil. The US didn't like that. So what the US did, they helped the Shah to kick out these men so they could get back to the normal treaty they had before. And it was a good deal. And who set that up? Dwayne, in 1953, was the US president. He was Republican. And he was like, America first. And he made the deal so the Shah could be the leader of Iran. So what was happening in Venezuela, so you have an understanding? Perez Jimenez was a dictator from the 1950 to the 1958. In reality, to my perspective, he wasn't too bad. Like, he used prisoners to build roads. Roads are used in Venezuela right now. Cheap labor. That people in prison, they're doing nothing. At least they were building something. But people didn't like him because, dictator, not very cool. The first elected president that was like democratically elected was Romulo Betancourt in 1959, and he lasted until 1964. Where was Cuba in all this? In 1952, there was a coup led by Batista. He became the dictator. And in 1955, he actually exiles Castro to Mexico. In Mexico, Castro meets with the Che Guevara, who was in Argentina, idealist, socialist, communist, all of it together. And then the Che Guevara and Castro in 1959 returned to Cuba thanks to a pardon gave by Batista, which was very weird because Batista was backed by the US, but all of a sudden he just gave that pardon. It was very weird. But that's how Coca-Cola and all those big industries that were in Cuba exploding the sugar cane, they were no longer there, and then everyone lost their jobs, and it was just very, very sad. And financially speaking, it was like a huge thing for the island to lose those companies. But yeah, we have a prime minister that is no longer a prime minister. We have the Shah as the king of Iran. We have Venezuela coming out of a dictatorship that was actually coming from a conservative and someone that really liked the US. We have Cuba that is currently in a dictatorship by the Castros, who are socialist, communist, Marxism, all of it. And then in the US, you got Democrats.
Editing this video, I realized that I forgot about Kennedy's dead. But in reality, it's so complicated because the guy who killed him was in the Marines. And he had a Russian wife, but also he had a high criminal record and mental issues. And I don't know how he could be part of the Marine with mental issues. Very weird, but this person is very influential, and this person has a Russian wife. And I have a theory with Patrice Lumumba University, which a lot of great communist leaders have come from that university, and they actually work in Latin America. So why is this woman even around? Nothing against the Russians, but the Russians back then were actually, they were famous for their spies. So this is just my conspiracy theory. Actually, don't believe anything I'm saying. This is just me connecting dots, and I'm like, well, that's just suspicious.
The before and after seeing Iran as a threat comes in here. 1960, Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia opened the OPEC, which is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. There is an idea. We have a lot of petrol. We should be together and we should be friends. The thing is, most of the countries were like, this is a way to have a tool against the US that one day we will use. One day. That one day arrived in 1973, the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War was Egypt and Syria attacking Israel. I don't want to get into details of that conflict, but the OPEC, which is the Organization of Arabic Petroleum Exporting Countries, did an embargo in the US. So the barrel went from $3 to $12. Guess who was benefiting from this? Venezuela and Iran. We were part of the OPEC? No, we were not. We were part of the OPEC. Actually, Venezuelans and Iranians, we quite like the Israelis people. We were always allies. But in this conflict, because we were making money, we just remained neutral. Because we didn't want to be against the people that is feeding us. And we also part of the people bringing the money in because we have petrol. So the Shah was like, I'm making a bunch of money. Venezuela was like, I'm making a bunch of money. We're saying nothing about that conflict, right? But in reality, the OPEC made that choice, not the OPEC. Venezuelans and Iranians and Israelis are actually not enemies by any sort of form. We just remain neutral for financial situations. That's when the US came to the realization, hey, we don't have that much power as we think we have. They needed bigger reserves of petrol because they realized how weak they were against these big countries. At the end of the day, a lot of countries had a very rough time during this war, but it showed everyone a lesson that is, we have more power than we think. And the US saw that as well. Talk about the elephant in the room. 1979, the Iranian Revolution. Listen, the British, the Americans, they already know how powerful these countries are. Separate one to show this. In 1963, right after the OPEC, they started the White Revolution.
Express how much I love the White Revolution because it was a way to modernize Persia, and I think it was revolutionary. I think it was perfect. They were talking about solar panels, technology. Like, these people were about to eat the world, and they had the money for it, but everything happens. You'll see.
In 1964, how many is exiled? Why do you think that happened? Because the Shah saw him as a huge problem. He was bad news. So illegal. You cannot be here. You're dangerous. In 1970, how many was working in university lecturing about Islamic government? Got a job and everything. Very impressive. Then in 1973, Iran gets the benefits of the war, of the Yom Kippur War we talked about before, which is good. So it means the Shah looks even better for the people that actually supports progress. So now the US finds out too much power. Too much power. No. So all of a sudden, in 1978, Khomeini gets so much money and so many resources to do a revolution. All of a sudden, after hating him so much, now we love him. So guess the Islamic Revolution, who actually, not just finances, but who actually benefits from it? The US thought they were. No. What happens is democratic parties are extremely racist and sexist. They thought that by having a very religious, spiritual person, they were going to have a weak Iran. That didn't happen. They still kept making engineers, doctors, and everything else, but under an Islamic regime. These people were brainwashed and still capable of building a nuke all at the same time because they're not capable. Who did that? Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, he was so racist that he never thought Iranians were going to be capable of building nukes. Because what? Why? Anyways, let's keep going because I get angry. I got chauvinist pressure. He's Polish, I can't pronounce it. He was the advisor of security back then for the US, and he said, hey, you shouldn't get Khomeini in because like he's dangerous. And Carter was like, yeah, now I'm not listening. Why? Because back then, James Callaghan was also the PM of England, and he was Labour. So they both aligned on the same views. And they were like, Khomeini's perfect. They're super stupid anyways. And then Margaret Thatcher had to deal with that after the next year, poor thing. But let's not talk about her right now because I feel so sorry for her. This is what happened during the revolution. I personally do not believe Khomeini just came out of nothing with the spiritual things and peace. Of course, he was financed by someone. And I believe it was the US or England because they assume Iranians are stupid. Dude, Persians made algebra. What makes you think they are stupid? That people are born and they're born intelligent. If you give them resources, they're going to use them. Are you insane? Seriously, like I don't know what makes them think Iranians were going to be stupid if they have a different faith. I swear to God. Now, let's talk about Venezuela. Our situation with the US and the world became horrible after the nationalization of the petrol. We made PDVSA, Petroleums of Venezuela, and that was it for us. We didn't have an actually strong ally in the OPEC, and the US, we were indifferent to them because we are actually trying to be independent. So I'm going to stop right there because I know you guys want me to talk about the Caracazo. I know my Venezuelans are like, yeah, let's talk about the Chavez coup and how Chavez got there. The thing is, Chavez's story doesn't start in 1992 when he did that coup. It starts before that. The people that watch my TikTok stream is screaming right now because we talk about that on my stream. I don't want to play with anybody's intelligence in this conversation I'm about to have because this is Venezuelans and I understand what's happening in your brain right now. I don't want to insult your intelligence at all. Back then, there was no internet. There was no way you could find out what was happening in the world at the same time. So this that I'm about to show to you is not your fault. Okay? Not your fault. Venezuelans, we were very happy people. We didn't know about politics because we had money. We had money from the war, we had money from this, and we were extremely joyful and happy. We didn't care about politics. I mean, because we were nonchalant to our situation, how would we know this was happening in the world? So I just want to put that out there before I'm about to say what I'm about to say. Chavez's story doesn't start 1992. No. Listen, Batista pardoned Castro over an ideology. Castro knew how important ideology was in order to conquer somewhere. The Shah pardoned Khomeini out of spirituality. Khomeini knew spirituality is what brings people together in a way that is even more intense, because spirituality is you with God, not you with anybody else. You know what I mean? So it's different, it's deeper. Then Caldera pardoned Chavez. And Chavez is a mix of both. He's a mix of spirituality with ideology, which makes him the perfect candidate to vet when he was young. When Chavez turned 18 and he wanted to be a soldier and he wanted to do all these things, he was already a far communist, socialist, who was also into Santeria and spirituality. The guy was perfect. He was smart, leadership skills, wanted to be in the army, wanted to be a skydiver. He could actually get into mission. And he knew about battles, but he also knew about Venezuelan culture. And he knew that at that time, Venezuela was the weakest because the country didn't like anyone in the government. Because for the country, everyone was bad. It reminds me of how Australia is right now with the liberal, labor, whatever. No one really cares what happened. Chavez did a coup in 1992 with the military. That's when he collected people. He collected people that were like, yes, this man was to trump the government. This is so good, right? He went to prison because he killed 50 people and even more in that coup. So he's an assassin, a murderer, a criminal, mind you. But it doesn't matter. He became a political prisoner. In 1995, even from prison, he made another coup, which was hilarious. And people loved him more. But Castro, he met Chavez way before that. Chavez was so into it because he already met the man, or a representative of the man, whatever the story goes. Because at the end of the day, this is speculation. But that's what the story says. Apparently they met. So Chavez gets support from external forces to get there. Like almost like, I'm not saying it's destiny, it's almost like it was impossible to avoid. Chavez was the mix of both. He was very kind with people, telling the poor that they're not poor because they are poor. They're poor because someone else is rich. And spirituality-wise, he was a santero. He really believed in those spirits and those things. And he played with that feeling when he spoke to people, the way how he spoke to people. It was genius. Whoever doesn't understand how genius this is, I think it's because they're traumatized by dictatorship. I'm traumatized by dictatorship, but I can see it from here. It was genius. If I was Khomeini at that time and Castro, who were guiding each other because they were besties, what makes you think is going to come out something bad? No, you're going to destroy one of the richest countries in the world. What makes you think you need someone that is not the mix of all that? It was a beautiful casuality because, for them, of course, I'm talking about if I'm like them, right? It was a beautiful casuality because Venezuelan people were not that patriotic. Chavez was like a need at that time. That was just perfect. That's the weakest we ever been. And you're literally tackling on the minerals of one of the richest countries in the world. It's genius. They had access to uranium. They had access to heavy crude. They had access to gold. It's genius if your next target is Venezuela. Genius. All of this happened and people die. Castro died and passed through Diaz-Canel, who is the current dictator of Cuba. Khomeini died and passed to Khamenei, which is not very original, but here they are. Then you have Chavez dies and passes to Maduro. Maduro is in prison right now. Khamenei is dead. Diaz-Canel is the only one that is alive, and he's very young, but he's also not as strong as Castro was. So Diaz-Canel is already negotiating with the US because he has no other option. Khamenei had to die. It was too extreme. Maduro, you know he's a puppet. You just need to put him in prison to make him talk. You need him alive somehow. But Diaz-Canel, you can also make him talk and put him into prison. Like, you don't need to actually kill him. Who is replacing this leadership in Iran and Venezuela? For Venezuela, we have Maria Corina Machado, industrial engineer, Nobel Peace Prize winner, the one that proved that Maduro lied. That's the one that is our candidate right now. But Iranians have Reza Pahlavi, the prince of the king, of the men that actually put Iran in the planet, with movies, with everything, with technology, with universities, with, he's the prince. People love him. People love the wife. People love the entire thing, the entire monarchy situation. They love it. But the first thing Reza Pahlavi said, which was like, he cannot be more nice. You know what I mean? He said, no, I'm going to go there just to do a transition. If you guys want a monarchy, cool. If you guys want a federation, cool for me too. The guy was there because people asked him to be there, which makes him even better. But he actually is educated, very, very well educated for the role, to keep the Persian Empire, alive one way or another. So people remember where they come from and they're like, okay, we can fix this problem and, rise up. So I believe he's a great candidate. Maria Corina, I also believe she's a great candidate, also because we don't have anybody else we trust. Maria Corina has a long life history of being a diplomat in Venezuela, but also she's the first person to ever talk bad to Chavez, to risk her time being a diplomat in Venezuela, and still stayed. So people trust her, mostly after the elections, after proving that they lost the election, going through all that. Venezuelans, we've been lied to so many times by other opposition leaders that we don't trust many people. But Maria Corina right now has the majority of the trust. With Diaz-Canel, I have no idea who's going to replace that man. That's Cubans to put in the comments. I have no idea who's the next opposition leader for you guys. But I just want to say there is another opposition in Iran right now, which is insane. I don't know exactly who are they with, but they are not with Reza Pahlavi or with the Iranian regime. They are the Mujahideen Khal. I'm going to put it here. Mujahideen Khal. No. Okay, they have the Mujahideen people, and they are pretty much opposed to anything. They don't like the US. They also don't like Reza Pahlavi, and they somehow have an army. So it's very interesting how it works for them. The whole point of this video is not for you to agree or disagree with me, bro. Like, all I want you is to have a topic of conversation, because if we stop talking to each other, that's when we start hating each other, hitting each other, and using guns. So the whole point of this video is for you to send it to a mate and start a conversation, because that's how we keep peace in between each other. When we meet each other, we have so much in common with each other. Everything is happening because we globalize everything. We talk through people online, and sometimes we don't see each other. But I believe if you had that person in front, you wouldn't say what you say online. You wouldn't be so hateful. If you disagree with me, please put it down in the comments. Be specific on why you disagree with me. This is nothing to agree on or not, because at the end of the day, this is just history and I'm just telling you a story. I understand that people is upset because Donald Trump is not making enough efforts for us to have democratic countries. But in reality, this is a two-way street. He does his part. Now the people, the civilians, we have to do the rest. We are the ones that have to demand elections. We are the ones that have to support our opposition leaders. That's why we need to go to the protests. We need to show our support. We need to sign those papers. And at the end of the day, guys, as I said before, this is also a spiritual battle, because the Iranian regime took away the spirituality of millions of people in Iran. And Chavez also did that as well. He took away our ideology or standards of way of living. He took away who we were. And we just can't forget about that. So it's a two-way street in here. It's not all the US have to do everything for us. No, we also are doing our part. Little by little, everyone is supporting each other. Maria Corina, we're doing the empadronamientos, and we know what that means. We know what we're doing. So we're getting ready for elections. And I believe Iran will also have the joy of getting ready for elections. It's very exciting. So don't lose faith. I understand that we're trying these people. We are trying Maria Corina. We are trying Reza Pahlavi. We'll see how that goes. But for now, it seems a pretty safe bet. And we should just take it and see how it goes. We already know, we already understand freedom. We already value freedom. And we got the basics to do very well as individual countries. So don't lose faith. Don't lose faith on this. I think this is a good year for us. And I don't want to believe all these sacrifices for nothing. I refuse to believe that.